Hi.
Hi, we live. Hi.
Die lied van 'n volk se ontwaak wat harte laat sidder en
Ek smoeg vir die vrese waarmee ons moet lewe, vir guns en vir moord en vir rape. Ek smoeg vir die bad news, vir Zuma en sy views, waarna ons op TV moet kyk. Ek wil nie meer hoor hoe ons tieners begrawe, oor niemand wil steur aan die wet. Ek wil nie meer lees van affirmative action of beklei om te hou wat ek het. Gee vir my 'n nuwe gein, 'n koers toe plezier en 'n tellerij, wat liedjies sing en skryf en stry oor die mooi van ons land en ons reg om hier te kan bly. Ek soek vir Malema, sy leuns en sy sê maar, ons hou maar ons mond en betaal. Ons kruip weg in kampe, word blind vir die rampe en bid dat die Heer ons onthaal. Daar's Winnie Mandela wat mense verbrand het, maar nou wil sy huil in haar hand. Die staatskas is leeg en die ANC jeug saai verwoesting en pyn hier ons land. Gee vir my 'n nuwe gein, 'n koers toe plezier en 'n tellerij, wat liedjies sing en skryf en stry oor die mooi van ons land en ons reg om hier te kan bly.
You've heard about the horrors of the apartheid system in South Africa. You've heard about the way the terrible white minority stole the land from the noble savages. You've heard of the thousands of needless black deaths in that country. You've definitely heard about St. Nelson Mandela and his travails while trying to free his people from abject poverty. Well, this program and my South African guests are ready, willing, and able to tell you the truth about South Africa, which the media has deliberately hidden from you. We will dispel all the myths and lies you've been fed and leave you with the bare facts. Welcome to Radio Free South Africa, coming to you on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. This is your host, Karen Smith. Our guest today is an anonymous, unknown Boer, Afrikaner, and Englishman, all rolled into one. A man who believes he can turn things around in South Africa by the grace of God. For those who know what I'm talking about, is he the man in brown, the man from the East, standing before a backdrop of blue? Who is this man? Allow me to introduce this man and SARA, the South African Republican Alliance. Hi, Richard, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it. Thanks for giving me the opportunity of saying something about SARA and about what I believe needs to be done. I think it's going to be an awesome show. We have an awesome host. And to the guests out there, ears open. Let's see how we go.
Thanks, Richard. Richard, could you just explain a little about yourself? Because I introduced you as an anonymous, just an ordinary person. If you could do that, and then explain who the man is and brown is, because many South Africans understand those references, but the international audience do not.
Okay, something short about myself. I'll get the ball rolling by saying, first of all, I'm not a politician. I've never had any interest in politics until a bit more than a year ago now. And And suddenly the passion is starting to burn inside of me, the flame is starting to burn, and now I've thrown myself into this type of thing. As for personally, I've been a Christian since the age of 22. That's my starting point. I was in the South African Defence Force for 8 years in the Armored Corps. I did my stint on the border when we tried to suppress communism and was sold out eventually. I'm a qualified pastor. I have my own business. I'm also a furniture manufacturer. I have a small lodge in this country of ours. And yeah, other than that, I'm 53 years old and raring to go. As for the man in brown, there used to be, not used to be, there was a gentleman with the name of Sinner van Rensburg who prophesied in South Africa many years ago during the Anglo-Boer War that at the for the setting free of the Afrikaner or the Boer peoples, there would come a man in brown, a man who would be Christian, a man who would be wise. He would have a heart for the Afrikaner, and he would bring them the answer that they would need to help them be free from oppression, tyranny, and perhaps establish their own homeland. That's the man in brown. Now, the far-right Afrikaner, or the Boer in South Africa, they are really hoping for this fellow. They thought it was Eugene Terreblanche when he came. No, he wasn't, because they are still in misery. There are others that they think could be, but nobody's doing anything. There's no evidence of this person arriving on the scene, but there is this hope that there would be this person arriving on the scene and helping the Afrikaner. That's in a nutshell.
You know, Richard, there are dozens and dozens and dozens, in fact, possibly hundreds of small groups in South Africa, some of them way bigger than others, in South Africa, all working towards the same end. But my complaint is that we don't seem to be able to stand together, form under one banner, and give ourselves a strong voice. Why do you think that you are the man who can do this, unite everybody together?
Well, I believe I have a mandate from God. For those who do not believe in God like I do, they might probably sting at that type of statement. But since the age of 22, I've had numerous spiritual experiences that have set the course of my life. And when you wake up in the morning, you know, you suddenly wake up and there's a voice telling you to start a political party, and you've got no idea where, what or who or how or anything like that, but you know it's God talking to you, then you just do it. So I believe I have a mandate. I believe, there's so many little things that I can mention that's happened this past year that's just set me on this course. So yes, I believe I have a mandate. I'll elaborate a little bit more on that a little bit later. But to get back to the Boer Afrikaner and the different parties and why there are so many different factions and different groups is basically a few fundamental elements. First of all, you have the groups that are trying to define what is a Boer and what is an Afrikaner. And then you get the Boer Afrikaner, and then you get the Afrikaner Boer, and then you get the English Afrikaner, and all that's just a mess in that type of scenario. That's the one thing. There's a group, they're trying to determine which group is now the real Boer Afrikaner. Then you have the Christian or the religious elements that are trying to define the Afrikaner or the Boer. There are those who call themselves the white Israelites, and there are those who are the Jesus-only people. Then there are those who are the the old conservatives. Some of them are so conservative, they still believe in Norse gods and stuff like that. And they still adhere to that type of thing. So you have the religious factions trying to determine who is a Boer and who is an Afrikaner and who is not. Then you have emotional decisions made in the different groups. You know of the group A Million Voices for Votes for Steve. You've heard about that group. And if you go look at the group's demography, you'll find that mostly women support him. His fans, his fan club support him. So there's the emotional group. And Steve has been really outspoken in South Africa. He's got the platform. He's an artist, and he speaks very well for the Afrikaner. And he also wants to see change, etc., etc. The only thing is that he's waiting for 1 million votes until he makes his move.
As I understand it, Richard, sorry to interrupt you, but as I understand it, Richard, Steve doesn't really want to be in politics. He is an entertainer. He is a staunch patriot. He speaks out. He has been severely commercially and financially attacked because of speaking out on behalf of the Afrikaner. But he doesn't really want to be in politics. You know, he said, I think partly in jest, when they asked him to run, he said, well, if you can get me 1 million votes, I will run. And I don't believe his heart is really in politics, but the mass of the people may well push him in that direction.
Well, I wouldn't say a mass of the people. We're looking at this page, and it's something like over 200,000 now. I could speak incorrectly there, but the last time I looked, it was over 200,000 people out of a 6.5 million possible votes. And even if he gets 1 million votes, it's still not enough to obtain 1 seat in the current government. It's insufficient.
Yeah, no, I get that, but he wanted the 1 million votes from people who want him to run, and I don't think that's going to happen. It has grown. I had them on the show recently, Amor Gerber from the Million Stemmer for Steve, and yes, it has grown hugely. And if there is a lack of another leader, then Steve is great because he has the experience, and not political, but the history and the speaking out in public and the world travel. He has that on his side. But all I'm trying to say is he doesn't necessarily want to be a politician.
That could be true, but on the other hand, I have to ask the question, why did he accept the mantle of the Boer Afrikaner leader at a meeting a couple of months ago where he bowed the knee to a group?
I saw that.
Yes. Yes, so my question is, first of all, who established the group to whom he bowed the knee to that swore him in as the leader? Who are they? And the only definite answer that I can come up with at this moment in time, I could be wrong, is that they are Freemasons. Now, the Freemason Society has been one of the thorns in the flesh of the Afrikaner and the Boers for many, many years. It was they who established the conservative religious outlook in South Africa, and it was they who kept the people basically docile and easy to control. So I, as for him not wanting to be the leader, why did he bow the knee? And they even knighted him with a sword. I mean,
yeah, I saw that, and I thought it was a great piece of theater, but not necessarily something to be taken seriously.
Yes. So we have these groups. We have these various groups. We have the Vryheidsfront, and we have AgriForum, and a couple of other splinter groups. They are fairly big. The one group, I'm not going to mention names, they ask more for donations than anything, and they are pushing for self-determination. which is not going to happen in our new world and in our new society. It's not going to happen. That's just not going to happen, because we are not a, how can I put this? There's a bigger plan out there. And the plan is simply a new world order that's come out of various American presidents' mouths. Bush, George Bush was one of the men that said that they are planning a world order and they will have it. Those were his words some time ago while he was still in office. And so what do we have in South Africa? We have a puppet regime that's being controlled either by NATO or Illuminati, elite, whoever you want to call them. And we have a country that's busy falling apart. It's becoming a dirty village. And corruption is rife. Police are terrible. Utilities have just about collapsed. The rand is what now, something like 16 or 20 to the dollar, where back in the days of apartheid, and please, I'm not saying apartheid was good. I'm just saying back in the apartheid days, the rand was 1 to 1 with the dollar. Now it's 16 to 20. I mean, go figure. It's just becoming worse and worse. And we also have all these murders taking place. The Afrikaner, the Boer Afrikaner is slowly but surely being exterminated. Those who are in the know exactly what's happening. We can see it. It's a white genocide that's happening under the very noses of the UN and these groups. They know what's happening, but it's all part of the plan. They also do know that the Boer Afrikaner is the only nation that will resist them. The only nation. And the reason why the Boer Afrikaner will resist them is because of the covenants that they've made with God. And those covenants are very, very important.
Yes, when we were chatting earlier, you were going to talk about those. And I think it's very important for the rest of the world to understand those things about the Boer, because I am forever saying that the Boer is an extremely God-fearing nation. And I think people need to understand those covenants, which you seem to have a firm grasp of. So could you speak about those?
Yes, I would love to speak about them. There's 3 nations in the world that made covenant with God. We all know the one with the Israelites. They made covenant with God many, many years ago. And the one covenant that God made with them is that he will establish their land, he will give their land borders, he will make them a prosperous. That little skirmish and that battle, but they never adhered to the covenant. Then we have the Boer covenants. Now, the first covenant that was made by a gentleman with the name of Jan van Riebeeck, who worked for the Dutch Indian East Company as a trader and as an explorer, a leader. And he landed in South Africa before South Africa was formed or any such thing was even thought of, on the 6th of April. And on that particular day, representing the Dutch people that came with him, he made a covenant. And he said on the swale, he said that today he makes a covenant with God, and he thanks God for saving his ships, saving all his men. Everybody came to the shores unharmed, and he would now establish a covenant before God. He was a very godly man. And the 6th of April would be honored to all generations for the safety and the protection that God had given him. That was the first covenant. The second covenant, which is a very important covenant, which most of the Boers and the Afrikaners, many English, are familiar with, is the Blood River Covenant, which took place on the 16th of December. Also, again, this particular covenant was a covenant of protection. If you will protect us, we'll honor this day. And at that particular, on the day of the taking of the covenant, the following people were present. There were 350 white people, which consisted of Dutch, French, and English speaking people. They were a mixture. There was also 59 colored people, which many people don't know that they were there, but they were there, 59 colored people, which They were a mixture of the San and the Khoi peoples. Then to come and help them later during the fight, a man with the name of A. Bigger and another one, E. Parker and R. Joyce, came to help and assist the Boers with 200 other black people from different nations, came and assisted them at the Battle of Blood River. So the thing about the covenant of the Blood River is, if you would protect us, if you protect our children and our wives and spare us this day, then we would honor this day, the Battle of Blood River, 16 December. The third covenant, which is not very familiar to many of South Africans, is the Broodryk covenant, which was on 14 December. At this particular taking place of this particular covenant, there were Transvaal men and women of the Transvaal, Afrikaner, Boer mixture, Dutch, and etc., during the Anglo-Boer War. There was basically 4 nations involved at that particular covenant, the Broodryk covenant. And it was also a covenant that said, if you protect us from the English and spare our children and our wives and this type of thing, then we would honor these days also for all generations. So here we have a couple of days. We have 6 April, 16 December, 13 and 14 December, basis, just about every week. And that is the Sabbath, the covenant of the Sabbath, which was a covenant given right in the time of Moses to God's children, the Israelites at that particular time. And it's also a covenant that was carried over through Jesus Christ. Now the Sabbath covenant is very straightforward. One day of the week, you have to honor the Lord, and you have to do no trading. No trading on that particular day. Now, there's a lot of debate about which day the covenant must be on. Is it a Saturday or is it a Sunday? We all know that in history, about 300 years after Christ, the Roman Catholic on your bottom and do nothing. It simply means no trading. Take a rest, take it easy, relax. Remember the Lord your God. Remember what He's done for you. Honor Him that particular day. It does not mean that you cannot go fishing. It doesn't mean that you cannot play sport. It means no trading. No trading, and honor God. Honor God being obviously the most important part of that covenant. If you were in South Africa in the 1970s and you had visited a farmer for evening dinner or supper, whatever you guys call it there in the USA, you will find that most farmers had Bibles on their dinner tables. And either before supper or dinner, they would read out of the Bible and say a prayer, or after dinner and supper, they would read out of the Bible and say a prayer. They were staunch in their religion. They still are. But some of them are just falling by the wayside and following different streams of religion at this particular moment, which makes it very difficult. So yes, 4 covenants broken. Third nation to make covenants with God. I know of no other nation that made any particular covenants for protection of children or wives or families. And these 4 covenants were all broken. Now the thing with God is, if God is who He says He is, right? If He is who He says He is, if He makes a covenant, or you make a covenant with Him, then that covenant needs to be honored. If you do not honor the covenant, then you can expect to get a big hiding. And the breaking of the covenants is one of the reasons why the Boer Afrikaner nation lost their land, not African land. They never stole the land. That is also a fallacy. But they lost their land because they did not honor their God and a few other various things which they've done and are still doing. Now, those things we have to reinstate. That's one of the things that I believe. Well, another thing that the Afrikaner people, the Boer people need to realize is that you cannot exchange God for alcohol, prostitution, money, idols. You exchange God for those things, your nation is going to fall. You just have to look at the Grecian nation, the empire they had, the Roman Empire, even the British Empire. All these major empires fell and crashed because of immorality, gross immorality. And Many will laugh it off and say that's just a load of nonsense. But it's the truth. If you look at history and you're a student of history, you will see that these nations, particular, they all fell because of these particular things. And the one thing is idols. Now, one can say, but the Afrikaner people do not worship idols. An idol can be anything. What the Afrikaner has done is he's changed the Sabbath to a wonderful sporting day. As a matter of fact, the whole weekend is a sporting adventure. And he's more at the sports grounds and on the sports fields, filling up the stadiums with far more people than what the churches are being filled up with. So what is the idol? Obviously, the idol is sport. I'm not saying that you cannot play sport. I love sport. I'm a qualified A-grade soccer referee. I love sport. I love rugby. I love cricket. I'm not so clued up with the American sports, but I enjoy a good baseball game as well. I can't get the NBA from my head. In any case, so sport has become the South African idol. If our sports do well, we cheer, we embrace each other. If our sports fail, you won't even find us near a barbecue. You won't even see us close to one. So sport has become an idol. The other thing that's become a great problem for the Afrikaner is what I jestingly refer to as klippies and coke met ys.
Yeah, isn't
alcohol.
it funny? Any South African will understand that and laugh. But for the rest of the world, that is totally foreign. Because that advert never happened anywhere outside of South Africa.
That's correct. Yeah, so klippies and coke, that's just simply alcohol with a bit of Coca-Cola and ice. And you'll find that at just about every barbecue in South Africa that you go to, the guys will be drinking, and it's just what they do. Now, you cannot do that and think that you can go sit the next day in church and God will honor you or be gracious towards you, you know? So that's another thing. Prostitution came in via, prostitution has always been there, but it's just escalated via the internet. It's escalated via freedoms given to public strip clubs, prostitution hangouts. It's advertised in the newspapers. You can look at in the back page of notifications and find anything that you want, basically. So it's blatantly put out there. It's on the platter. It's in your face. And it's one of the things in the book of Acts, chapter 15, that we are warned against. And one of the four things that we are warned against is adultery, you know. So God hates that. So if God is who he says he is, then we are in big trouble, and we really are in big trouble. There's no denying the fact that we are being slaughtered, slowly, surely, and systematically. We are being taken out. So those things brings the fall of a nation. Now, of course, you will know when I say that men such as F.W. de Klerk and these guys sold out the Boer Afrikaner nation when they released Mandela. As a matter of fact, Mandela was released long before that time. He was already living on the mainland and speaking to various leaders. So this was a planned thing. It was a thing that started out many, many years ago and was, and the Afrikaner nation was basically, to use the word again, prostituted. And we were sold out. So you can say, yes, we were sold out by F.W. de Klerk and a host of other men, prominent businessmen, who sold out the country. That is a truth, but I don't see them really as traitors or anything like that. I see them as instruments. They were used by the hand of God to bring the Boer Afrikaner nation to a fall. But all is not lost, you see. That's the wonderful thing about God, is that if you turn from your wicked way, and if you honor him, if you confess your sin, then he is gracious, and he will restore you, and he will restore your land. So all is not lost, but there has to be a starting point. There has to be a beginning. There has to be somebody that says enough is enough. No matter what, this is what we're going to get right. And this is how we're going to do it. And I believe I can do that. I believe I'm the man to do that. I read a comment of one lady. I know she should be listening to the show. She said she was. She said there are many, many men who thought they were the man in brown, or who said they were the man in brown. The difference between those many men and myself is I believe I have a mandate, and I'm going to open my mouth according to that mandate, and I'm going to do according to that mandate. I just wish I had the money that Donald Trump has. I would do it quicker, but I've got to take it slowly, anonymous, the man in the shadows, slowly coming out, slowly coming to the front, holding a few meetings, seeing what the reaction is, speaking about these things, getting it out there, and energizing the folk, to put it that way.
I was reading your kind of manifesto, and I was very interested where you said, our rich don't care and our poor beg on the streets. Our poor parties don't stand together. Monies are taken, but nothing gets done. Just talk. Some good things are said, but there's no forward momentum. Klein fillet edges forward, but this is a drop in the proverbial bucket. Now, I tend to agree with what you have said there, because 1 million klein fillets is not going to solve the problem, because we have Orania, but Orania operates against a black onslaught. And you also said,
we make our own laws. We want to be free. We do not, if we do not want to tolerate other cultures, we don't have to. We want to police ourselves. We want to arm ourselves. We want to have our own judges, laws, jurisdictions, and all this type of thing. We want to be able to walk the streets at night without fear of being mugged or robbed by another culture. Now, when we say another culture, you have to understand that there are 54 million people plus in South Africa. About 46, 7 odd are African. Approximately 50% of those Africans are unemployed. Now, if you look at the unemployment figure, you'll say, what, 50%? That can't be true. It actually is. It's the statistics that they use are just lies. It's just fabricated statistics. You have beggars at every traffic light. You have muggers. You have hijackers at every traffic light, just about. So, self-determination in a vast majority of unemployed blacks, self-determination in a country where the vote is determined by the majority, it's not going to happen. 2 weeks ago, I read an article, a governmental article that stated that they are starting to look into the Orania issue. So that has now become a focal point for them. The main thing is that
given this year's whole start on white racism in South Africa, because that is what started out this year. White racism. Blacks cannot be racist. I mean,
no, they can't. And the thing about racism, racism or racist is a word that was coined in 1927, which actually was given to people who are against the majority's decisions and will. So if you are against the majority in whatever they decide to do, then you are a racist. And obviously being the minority, the whites being the minority, and we obviously understand the corruption and we understand the tribal thinking, we are the racists because we don't agree with what they are doing. So every time we open our mouths or say something which is against the current government or against what the black people are doing, then we are racist. We can speak the truth. We can speak according to the Constitution. We can speak, according to the laws of the land. But because we are white, we are racists. And that is a big, big problem. But I want to touch on self-determination.
Yeah.
What I propose for the South African nation and cultures is semi-self-determination. Let me explain that. A few years ago, during the National Party's reign, there was tabled an idea to establish homelands. Now, this was not a far-fetched idea, because at that particular time, the various African tribes were already based in their homelands. The Zulu was in KwaZulu-Natal, the Xhosa, other side the Kei River. They were already in their tribal homelands, and all that the National Party wanted to do at that particular time was to say to them, look, we will help you to govern yourselves, help you to set up your own little spot in the sun, so to speak, yeah. So my proposal again is a semi-self-determination, where each group manages its own affairs under a national law, not complete self-determination, because it will just be a mess. We have come to realize that there are certain cultures and certain groups that simply cannot stand on their own 2 feet, so to speak. They need help, they need leadership, they need guidance, and or else they'll just revert to their village state. So my proposal is semi-self-determination. I have a bit more ideas on that one. And just to give you a little bit of what I mean by semi-self-determination is, if you in your own state, you have your police force or your traffic officers, you decide what uniforms they're going to wear, you decide what cars they're going to drive, you decide what fines you are going to impose. However, the speed limit for the nation is 120 kilometers per hour or 70 miles per hour. So the national government determines the general law, and then the states determine how they want to apply that law, of course, in regard to whatever the national government has to say about that. The police force will be a national police force, and the defense force will be a national defense force. However, each little semi-state, semi-determined area will also have their own police force to run their own affairs, their own way of doing things, etc., without getting into the backyard of the other peoples. Now, we need to understand one thing. One thing is I need to make one thing very clear, is that South Africa, the bigger part, the greater part of South Africa, does not belong to black people. It never has, and they're trying to force that down our throats, and it never will. A portion of the countryside in the Cape was inhabited by the San and the Khoi people, or the Khoisan, or the Griqua people, whichever you want to call them. They were migrants. Some of them were migrants with their cattle. Others were just moving from place to place, hunting, etc. They had no concept of owning land. They never owned land. They just moved from North Africa to South Africa as the animals moved and as the seasons progressed and that type of thing. As for the Zulu nation, it had a certain portion of land which it controlled and governed, and under Chaka it started to murder the tribes around and about them, and that's how they obtained more land. There was as the Boers moved north, the various African groups fled the wrath of Chaka to the south and to the west. But they never had a concept of owning land. Only when the Vryburgers or the Voortrekkers or the forerunners of the Boers came into contact with them, we gave them the concept of owning land. Is this your land? We'll give you 10 head of cattle for it. And that's how it all started.
But
so
today,
that's one.
If you look at them where they're ruled by their own chiefs, if you look at them in their own tribal areas, an individual does not own land. If you want a piece of land, you go to the chief and you say to him, that piece of land over there with the 3 rocks and edging on the river is the piece of land I would like to have. And he says yes or no, and you pay him in cattle, but you do not own that land. It is still tribal lands. They still don't, in their natural environment, have a concept of personal ownership.
Correct. But that's what they're trying to force down the throats of the uneducated. And they're trying to tell the white people, but this land has always belonged to us and it's never belonged to you. That is a fallacy. That's one of the biggest lies ever perpetuated by the current government, simply because they want to take the focus off themselves and put it on the white people, us white racists. Now, how do we get the country back, Karen? Have you got any idea? How do we get this country back? How do we get it back to a state of governance?
I'm not really sure at all how one does that, because the whites in South Africa are outnumbered so very badly. There are so many laws discriminating against their minority. I don't personally, Richard, I don't believe that South Africa will ever belong to white people again. But I am willing to fight for that concept and to help to, if I could find somebody who had a plan that was possible and sensible, I would willingly throw my support behind you. But if, and this is how the program started, if we cannot get the whites to stand together, we are never going to achieve anything.
That's correct. And that's where I believe I can come in and solve that problem. We will never have a white dominant government ever again, or for a very long time, let me put it that way. But what we can have is a integrated government on a national level. Say, for example, 3 Boers, Boer Afrikaners, 3 Khoisan, 3 Zulu, 3 Xhosa, 3 Sotho, 3 Tswana, all the different cultures in South Africa. We can have a national government operating on a integrated system, and then we can have semi-federalism per state. In other words, the Tswana rule the Tswana, the Xhosa rule the Xhosa, the Zulu, and then we can have a Boer Afrikaner state, which rightfully belongs to them in the middle of this mix, because most of the Free State, if not the greater part of most of the Free State, the greater part of Transvaal, you'll notice that I don't use the African words for those areas. The greater part of the Cape belong to the Boer Afrikaner. And they moved there, they settled there, they established their peoples there, and the only reason why they ever moved into the Natal area was because of the Zulu wars that broke out. And eventually the Xhosa wars and all these type of things. That's the only reason why they moved out of their ground into the territory of other peoples, was to fight back, basically. And so, yes, I believe there can be an integrated government that are held responsible by the federations, and also the federations then being held responsible by the national government. I believe it can be done. I believe it can be achieved. And I'm going to work wholeheartedly towards that end. But first, it has to start with the Afrikaner.
Sorry, what you were saying then is you want a kind of American system, the way it was designed to be. with a federal government with very limited powers and a whole bunch of states underneath of that who basically make decisions for the people in that state. So if the Zulu king will make the decisions for the Zulus under federal laws, but limited federal government. Is that what you are saying?
Yes, I'm saying that. Although if I look at the your system on that side of the river, that system is falling apart because you have a leader at this particular moment who doesn't care for your constitution. So it's really not working that way.
You know, it worked. It worked for a very, very long time. It worked well. Yes, it is falling apart. It's falling apart all over the world right now for white people. I mean, we just seem to be, there seems to be an absolute planned onslaught on whites to disappear us from the world altogether. But basically, the American system was an absolutely fantastic experiment. And if we didn't have a bunch of corrupt politicians who were in it for their own pockets rather than serving the people they were elected to serve, it is the best system ever devised in this world. But what that's what I was trying to point out. Okay, so you set up this, and it works for 2 centuries. And then you get some bunch of politicians in, and the whole thing falls apart again. And of course, how are you going to get the numerous, disparate, fighting black tribes who believe in their nationalism? Because you've got Zulu nationalism and Tswana nationalism and Xhosa nationalism, etc. How are you going to get them to agree to this thing that you're proposing?
Okay, that is a very good question, and I'm going to answer it this way. The only way that they will agree to something like that is it will depend on the carrot that we dangle in front of them. That is the hard sort of thing about it. Intellectually, many intellectuals among different tribes and groups, but their motivation at this particular time is which particular carrot are you dangling in front of them. And that carrot can only be helped on if the Afrikaner, the Boer Afrikaner, comes in line with what they had promised God. It is a very, very important step. The Afrikaner, the Boer Afrikaner, first has to come in line with what they had promised God. They first have to come in line with the Word of God, and they first have to amalgamate as one. Once that is done and they are back to square one where they started out, then and only then will God fight on their behalf. Then we can go to these various groups, seek out the traditional leaders, because the traditional leaders at this particular time are just pieces on a chessboard, ornaments in a cupboard. They don't really mean much. The authority has been diffused in a way. For example, the Xhosa king complained a couple of months ago that he was getting less money and less recognition than the Zulu king, and that was unacceptable, seeing that the ANC party was basically mostly a Xhosa party in the beginning. And so yes, so you have a Xhosa king that's unhappy with a Zulu king, and you have another group's king that's now, or prince, that's now being sent to jail because of his corruption and all this type of stuff. So yes, once the Afrikaner has come in line with what he has to come in line with, then we can sit down and discuss various options with the African leaders. Now here is the thing, Karen. This is an important thing. If we do not come to a certain agreement or an understanding, there will be a war. There will be. Because if the Afrikaner or the Boer does not gel or amalgamate on a Christian level, they will amalgamate or gel on a defensive, protective level. to protect their families, to protect the peoples. And the only thing that will happen then is that they'll fight. They'll fight. So what are we doing? We are trying to prevent a major fight. Will we be able to prevent fighting at all? I don't think so. I think that there will still be some disparaged parties. There will still be factions fighting, African factions. I actually see Africans fighting each other for the most part, because the one would not agree with the other one, as you mentioned. I can see that happening. So either it has to start with the Boer. It has to start with the Boer coming to the place of repentance where he says, yes, actually, what we did was we gave the country away. We drank too much, we prostituted too much, we idolized too much, we forgot our God. And if God is who he says he is, then God pulled the plug on us. So the man in brown, back to the man in brown. The man in brown knows his God. He knows the word of God. And he walks in the power of God, which is very important. And that particular person will amalgamate the Boers, and they will become one. I believe that with my whole heart.
Well, once again, looking at, we're coming up to an ad break, and after the ad break, I would like to read to you a piece from a black South African. I don't know if you know who he is, Menzies Solomon, who is he's not exactly pro-white, but he is definitely a very intelligent black man who understands that the country is going to hell in a handbasket, and that there is only one way to fix it, and that is for us all to stand together. So, yeah, we've got about 3 minutes before we come up to an ad break, and then I'll come back with that, because I think it is very important that people understand that even the blacks in South Africa are getting fed up with the ANC. In your write-up, you also said that the ANC is losing a ton of members to the EFF, which is run by Malema. And when you spoke about the black unemployment rate, that is all part of it, because the blacks, disaffected black youth whose unemployment is around 52%, are now beginning to turn on the ANC and go and follow the EFF instead.
Correct. But what is their method? What is their operandus? How do they go about voicing their dissent? They have established a culture of violence.
Absolutely.
And so what they do is they burn, they steal, they terrorize, they murder, and that's how they get heard. They break down. They have got no concept of building. Unfortunately, they don't have a concept of building. They will rather tear down and destroy and pull down to have themselves heard. So we have these droves that will join the EFF, and we will have the ANC that will stand up against them. And what you'll have is you'll have these black groups fighting it out. And wherever they are found, they will be destroying, hurting, killing, and maiming each other. So yes, that's what definitely will happen. The culture of violence needs to be stopped. And many people have said violence begets violence. That is true in a sense. Unfortunately, if you live by the sword, you know the saying,
yes,
you die by the sword.
Yes, exactly. I agree with that. But it is in the ANC's best interest right now to promote the violence, because, as you yourself said earlier, it shines the light away from what they are doing and their fraud and corruption and stealing and lying and destroying the country, and shines it on a different area. So whether it is immigrants, illegal immigrants from Zimbabwe that are being killed by xenophobia, or whether it's the whites being murdered in their hundreds of thousands, it doesn't really matter as long as the violence keeps going and keeps the attention off of them. So how do we ever even think we're going to stop that?
First of all, as I said, we need to get back to God. That's the most important thing. That is the main mission of the man in brown. You know, when people read Sina van Rensburg's prophecies and they read about this man in brown that's going to come in a brown suit with a grey coverall or overall, then that's what they see in their mind's eye. They see this elderly gentleman in this brown two-piece or three-piece suit with this grey overall, and he speaks very intellectually and very religiously, and he binds them all together. I have a different take on that. I don't believe that the man in brown literally means he comes in brown clothes. To me, the color brown is a color that's associated with wood, with nature, with the ground, the earth. He's a man of the earth. He's a man that, how can I put this? That, you know, if you look at a piece of ground, you don't know what's underneath that ground. And you don't know if there's minerals or oil or that type of resort. You don't know what this guy brings. That's how I see this particular person. That's how I see myself, as bringing something that is not being mentioned, something that's not being spoken about, something that's been touched upon by a few groups, like Sunette Bridges. Sunette Bridges, you've heard of her. She mentioned covenants once upon a time. And but this man in brown is a man who comes from nowhere, who understands, who has wisdom, who has knowledge, who has intellect, and he knows what to do. So it's got to start there. It's got to start with the religious aspect. It's got to start with getting the Afrikaner back online, basically, just to use some IT terms. We have to get him back online. And we have to get the junk out, and we have to reprogram him to get back to God. So it has to start with the Afrikaner. There's no two ways about it. And from there, once we have done what we need to do, establishing the Afrikaner as a religious group, as a religious entity, but using the proper religious guidelines, not all this mainstream rubbish, or offshoots rather, not mainstream, offshoot stuff, getting away from the conservatism and understanding what God is all about, getting them to bow the knee once again, to open up their Bibles and to put away the brandy. Once that is done, then I believe a turnaround can come. In the process of that being done, there will be violence, not between white and black. Perhaps one or two or three or four incidents.
Richard, on that note, the station is having a problem today, so obviously the ads are not going to run, but I would just like to do a station check, and I am going to play. You were speaking about Sunette Bridges, and in the chat room they have been saying how much they love her music. So I'm going to play my personal favorite song, Story of a Life.
I can see myself as a golden sunrise, young girl. Open up your eyes, it's supposed to be your day. Now off you go, rise and bound, and you won't stop until you found your own kind of way. And the wind will whip your tousled hair, the sun, the rain, the sweet despair, great tales of love and strife. And somewhere on your path to glory, you will write your story of a life. And all the towns that you walk through, and all the people that you talk to, sing you their songs, sing you their songs. And there are times you change your stride, there are times you can't decide, still you go on. And then the young boys sing their gypsy tunes and share the secrets of the moon. So soon you are a wife. And though he sees your dreams go falling, still he joins the story of a life. find a place that you come from. The wandering is done. And all your dreams of open spaces you find in your children's faces, one by one by one. And all the trips you know you missed, and all the lips you never kissed, cut through you like a knife. And now you see stretched out before you just another story of a life. So what do you do now? What do you do now? Looks at you now. You know those same old jokes that you used to tell. You tell them to now. And all the same old songs that you used to sing, you're singing to now. Singing to now. But it don't matter anyhow, 'cause he knows by now. He knows by now. So every chance you take, don't mean a thing. What variation can you bring to a sharp one melody? And every year goes by like a totem bell. It's better reaching out yourself, not that you can see. And though he's heard it all 1,000 times, couched in your attention right, march to your drum and fight. But the question echoes out before me, where's my magic story of life?
That is not Sunet's personal favorite, but it's mine. Listening, it is a beautiful song. You're listening to Radio Free South Africa on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I would like to remind you that this station is only able to bring you news and stories that no other station can or will, because the MSM is hiding everything from you, thanks to your donations. So for $5 a month, you can become a member and have access to all our archived shows, and there are many very valuable shows to listen to. Or you can take a little trip down to our store and pick up some goodies and keep these shows on the air. So please take that into consideration next time you like one of our shows. It takes money to keep them running. Richard, we're back. I would like to read, it's a very short article by Menzi Solomon Shange, the one I was telling you about before the break, because I think it's a valuable piece of information that there are Black people who think like this. And it also points out how disaffected they are becoming with the ANC government. So he says, the South African majority are supporting the success of race baiters and poverty pimps. Yes, if you have not figured it out yet, I am talking about the majority-elect ANC's policies that are oppressing our nation. 1, racial baiting and separatism, and 2, institutionalization of the tragic underclass. How numb we have become to the racial poison being fed to us by the political party currently in power. It is in their words, their policies, and their actions, and reflected in their inaction. The ANC misleaders in our community not only spread this blinding disease, but profit from it as well. Personal upliftment, economic freedom, and community betterment is achieved by first ridding ourselves of the ANC vermin. Step 1. Once this is done, you will realize that our government has institutionalized the underclass in order to fuel their hidden agenda to maintain their excessive lifestyles and taking basic steps, and will be empowered again, like we felt when the old ANC were in power and when they honored their core values. We must stop being played. If you wish to be free, join us, but leave the slaves behind. We are only going to seek freedom with freedom-loving people.
Ideals of the ANC. The only thing is, you can join South Africans for Change, and how are they going to do that? You know, how are they going to bring change? They're going to try the normal political route, which will fail because the majority is, as he said, they are uneducated, they are being kept dumb, they are being kept poor, and the ANC knows this, and they abuse.
I do believe we're back on. If everybody would just give me one moment, I will connect our guest and we will continue with the show. I'm sorry that we're having such problems today, but it just is one of those things. Technology is great until it isn't. Richard, are you there? Hi, Richard.
Yeah.
I do believe we're back on air. The studio is having a terrible problem today, but I think we are on. Just let me check in the chat room. I think you may have to backtrack a little, Richard, because we may have missed some of what you were saying. You were talking about the, they say they're looking into, no, we're not back yet. Someone will advise me in the chat room once we're back. So you know what I'm going to do, Richard? I'm just going to play another song in the meantime until they tell us we're back on, okay? Because I don't want them to miss what you were saying.
Sure, no problem.
I think that's the best way to go. I was not set up for this, guys. I'm sorry. I did not have the music lined up and I didn't have... I am going to play for you Sunet's favorite song of all her songs, Andante, Andante.
Take it easy with me, please. Touch me gently like a summer evening breeze. Take your time, make it slow. Andante, andante, just let the feeling go. Make your fingers soft and light. Let your body be the velvet of the night. Touch my soul, you know how. Andante, andante, go slowly with me now. I know music, and I am the song, your song. I am the same me time and time again, and make me strong. Cause you make me sing, make me sound, make me andante, andante, tread lightly on my ground. Andante, andante, oh please don't let me down.
Okay, Richard, they're telling me in the chat room that we are definitely back. I think you may have to backtrack a little bit to where you were saying why you think that the Chiefs and them will join with you. We seem to have fallen off the air a little. The studio is running at about 4% today, I'm told. And so we're having a couple of problems. So if you just backtrack a little, we won't miss too much in the podcast.
Well, basically the tribal leaders are disillusioned and they've lost a lot of authority. They don't have the same say or rights over their own people like they used to have. They've become more like a figurehead. So that is the gist of it. Yeah, and we need to sit down with them and to say to them, look, we can assist you to build up your part of the country again. We'll give you the financial needs, the professional needs, the expertise, the intelligence, whatever you need to reform your own little spot in the sun and to bring you up to standard. I'd like to see, I believe we can bring it up to standard. As I was mentioning, at least a second world country, if not a first world, but it can be done.
And you do believe that even with all the accusations of it being a return to apartheid, they will still accept that we want their best, we have their best interests at heart.
Yeah, absolutely, because each and every territory will have the same advantages and privileges of their neighbors. It's not going to be a white and a black thing. It's going to be each federation just doing their own thing under a national government. And if a white man wants to work in KwaZulu-Natal, he can. And if a Zulu wants to work in Vendaland, he can. There's going to be no discrimination on culture or race or anything like that. You have the same opportunity as each and everyone else. The only thing that we're going to change is to uplift the various areas using the traditional leaders, using the population of the particular area, giving them the tools to change their own bit of ground around. Instead of it being a dirty village, change it to at least a second world country for the most part. And we can do that. We can do that. I'm just not saying it. I know we can do that. And yes, it won't be apartheid at all. There'll still be national laws, and each each federation rather, or federal state, whichever you want to call it, or semi-federal state is what the terms that I'm using, will be self-determined in a big way. Your people ruling you, and then everybody else ruling everybody else, type of thing, being in charge. Just kind of giving it a bit of a,
and
putting it in a nutshell.
I get that, but do you think? One can't. I was going to ask you a question. Do you think it'll go the same way that that the United States is going at the moment? But one can't see that far into the future. But I'm pretty sure that is a definite will happen, because the states were, as I said, were set up as the most incredible and workable experiment in human relations that I have ever seen. It was an incredible thing to see. But it just takes a handful of bad men to bring the whole thing down.
That is correct. That's where the voice of the people, in your case, your constitution, although it's not being adhered to, but the voice of the people becomes very important. So the most important thing in these semi-federal states would be by-elections, okay? If you are not happy with your leader, if the majority is not happy with your particular leader in your particular area, then by-elections are held and that particular leader is kicked out. The one thing that there will be a crackdown on will be corruption. So if there's any hint of corruption by any of these leaders in the federal system, then they will have to adhere to the national law concerning corruption, which will still be embroidered upon and expounded. So there won't be, there will be corruption and things will come in, but those who do that type of thing and are caught will immediately lose all status or whatever they have, even if they are a tribal leader or a chief, and they will be put in jail and they will be incarcerated like the rest of those who operate in that particular manner. And that is the work or the oversight of the national government. So first of all, the people will be able to vote out people that are not doing their work through by-elections, not every 5 years or every 4 years, but once a year you can go and have a vote. And get you can change whoever you want to change. If the majority in that particular area votes for a certain leader, then that leader is going to be put into place. And that's just how it's going to be. Each nation, each culture, voting for their own people on their own piece of ground. That's the only apartheid, basically, that will be there. But other than that, the national government will oversee all these various federations through national laws, make sure that there's no corruption, make sure that various people that do participate in unethical governance are dealt with immediately. If the national government sees that the semi-federational or the semi-federation's government does not adhere to the national government's laws and find them inadequate to do the job, then they'll be fired, to put it that way, and by-elections will be held and new people will be put in place. And that's going to happen in every institution. If the Minister of Health is incapable of doing his or her work, they'll be fired. There's no two ways about it. You'll just be fired and somebody else will replace you. That's it.
Okay, but there are two comments I'd like to make there. One is that we already in South Africa had the best constitution in the world. It's even been held up by Congress here in the United States as the best written constitution in the world. But what use is that if politicians use it for toilet paper?
You know, I took the constitution in December and I had a good read. And the current president of South Africa has broken the first, if I counted correctly, the first 8 to 16 pages of the Constitution. He's just about violated every single thing that's been said in there. So what use is having a great Constitution if, as you say, if those in power do not adhere to it? So yes, to turn South Africa around, you need to do the few things that I've mentioned. And in the beginning, the national government will have to be like a semi-police state, like a small dictatorship, if you will, to sort out the corruption, to sort out the murders, the thefts, the hijackings, and all that kind of thing. So, and then once that is in place, and once every role player knows their part to play in a new government, with a new system, then we can have a relook at the Constitution and say, okay, let's see if we can now fully implement this Constitution the way it was supposed to be, but under a national Republican government with various the federations under them.
Richard, if you give a federal government limitless power to start with, and then you try and take that power away from them, I don't see that working, because if you look at politicians around the world, they go into it seemingly with idealistic ideas and definitely they're the person to rescue the people. But once they get into power, it seems to go to their heads within hours. And they will hang on to power with every single ounce of their strength. So that being the case, how do you think, if you gave the federal government almost unlimited power to start with, in order to clean up the country, do you think they will ever let go of it? Because it doesn't seem to me in world experience that that is what they're going to be willing to do.
Well, there's one thing that if you look at various governments of the past, various leaders, if you look at their background, you'll find that hardly any were seriously Christian motivated governments. You have Botswana, for example, which is a beautiful example of a government that is mostly Christian. Their money is stronger than the South African rand. They have hardly any problems in that nation. They're slowly but surely going forward. They are not going backward. They're picking up the people there are happy. There is peace in the country. If you just drive through the country, you can feel the peace. They have a Christian government, and it's working for them. They don't have other religious factions. You know what's one of the biggest lies ever to be perpetuated in history is called religious freedom. If God, I always harp on this one thing. If God is who He says He is, then He's a jealous God, and He does not tolerate any other religions. If you have a Muslim religion and Muslim leaders in a country, well, you know what the results are. The results are mayhem, murder, chaos. If you have people that have got no concept of morality in government, you have poverty, endless poverty. Take Zimbabwe, for example. Mugabe and his ways of doing things have totally ruined that country. Now I understand that power corrupts, and that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now this is where the man in brown comes in. He comes from a different angle. He comes from a background of serving an Old Testament God. His moral laws are steadfast. He is determined to see change in his country, and he's determined to do it on a Christian method, a method that upholds morality, that upholds family values, that upholds patience, peace, love, and all those kind of things. He comes from that kind of a background. He does not come from a barbaric background. He does not come from a we are better than you background. He comes with strength, he comes with power, he comes in love, and he comes and he establishes a government that runs according to these laws, God's laws, moral laws. Thou shalt not steal. If you steal, you'll be incarcerated. If you take a life, your life will be taken from you. If you hijack a car, you will lose everything that you have, and you'll go sit for a very long time, and you will work as a slave under the very people that you've stolen from. You have I think it's in Texas that you have this wonderful, what do you guys call it there? You have this one prison warden. I just love the guy.
That's in Arizona, Sheriff Joe.
Yeah, this fellow knows exactly what to do with prisoners. He's got it right. I watched the show on this fellow, and I take my hat off for him because he's got it right. And that's what we need back in South Africa. The criminal must know that he cannot be a criminal. There's no place for the criminal in South Africa. There's no place for the criminal at all. And it doesn't matter what crime you commit, you will be dealt with the full force of the law. And when I say full force of the law, I don't mean judges that sit for months and months and months on a certain docket or something. I don't believe in that. We will be forceful, and I'm going to say this on the air. My full intention, is to reinstate the death penalty. If you murder somebody, I'm not going to keep you in prison for 25 years and feed you and teach you and try to educate you. What happened from my moral point of view is you have taken a life, and your life is forfeit when you do that. It's been a proven fact, if you remove the death penalty from any nation, the murders increase. They just increase, and they increase in quite a big way. I did some study on the statistics in that particular area. I will also institute the death penalty for pedophiles. If you mess up a child's life, then your life will be messed up permanently. Rape cases, those type of things, you'll be dealt with harshly, immediately and solidly. If you are caught in the act, if you are caught with the evidence, There's no getting this lawyer to get you free and all this type of thing. If the evidence is with you, you've been caught, you're 100% guilty, you will be judged within a certain period of time, and you will feel the full force of the law. That is one thing that will have to come back. Once crime is brought to an all-time low, then we can take the foot off the pedal a bit and be a bit more lenient in certain areas. Still not changing the law in any way, but just being a bit more conscientious, a bit more open to discussion, etc., etc. But in the beginning, I mean, if I ever have to become president of South Africa, all those who have murdered people that are in jail, they will forfeit their lives immediately. There's no such thing as giving them another plate of food. I'm sorry. They'll be gone. And I'll clear those jails out within a week. That's just one of the things that I will do. In any case, so yes, we need a bit of a police state to change things around. You have to do that. But the key element to this whole police state thing is we have to have a man and men and women around and about him that are morally guided, that are strong in their beliefs, that can stand for what they believe in, that are basically incorruptible, and if they are found to be corruptible, then they will also be dealt with by the national government. Whether it be the president, whether it be the vice president, doesn't matter which portfolio you hold. If you are found to have broken the law, you will be dealt with the law. Nobody's outside the law. Big words, I know.
All right. So now you're talking about a small Christian minority dealing with an enormous ancestor worshipping majority.
Yes.
How do you reconcile that? Because for a country that calls itself Christian, and the ANC do call themselves a Christian country, they A, communists, and B, ancestor worshippers, and C, all the Sangoma powers that have been given to the Sangomas in the last few years are horrific. And they use body parts and kidnap children and all kinds of awful things. How would you possibly pull that lot together?
Well, again, I have to state, if okay, let me give you an example. I'd rather give you an example, so let's be better. There's a scripture that says in the Old Testament, can a nation be born in a day? Now, through the Balfour Declaration and various other means, Israel was established in a day after the Second World War. Israel did not exist, and suddenly she was. Why did Israel suddenly exist? Was it because men decided that? Was it because of the declarations that they made, the plans that they made, or what? Or did God have a hand in it? Now, that scripture was written approximately 4,000 years ago. So, if God can establish a nation in a day to follow His will, and even though they're following it according to the Old Testament pattern, according to their laws and traditions, the Torah and the Midrash, even if they are following it according to those patterns, the very first patterns established, if God can establish a nation in a day, and if God is who He says He is, and if we do it His way, will He not then empower us to get rid of all these evil practices, these sangomas, these evil men, these henchmen? You see, all these things will be eradicated with a semi-police state in the beginning. You won't have a chance. You will have no chance. If you are caught to have chopped up a child, you will face the death penalty within 24 hours. There's no way of getting out of it. You can go say goodbye to your family. I don't care from which culture or race you are. Now, these things will be made known to the traditional leaders. They'll say, yes, we will lift you up. Yes, we will establish you. Yes, we will raise you up. But no sangomas in parliament, no sangomas in the municipalities, nothing like that. If you want to go visit those guys in the quiet in their homes where they can practice anything they want, you can go do that. But nothing will be in public, nothing. If it is seen in public, it will be torn down. That is how harsh we will deal with these things. We have to.
Can you change 60 million plus black people, yes, I agree, you say God can do anything, but these people are not willing to change. You can see that from the influx of them into Europe at the moment and into the United States. You can see that they are not willing to integrate or change. They want to turn every country into the hellhole that they have apparently refugeed themselves from. So, and these are not South African blacks that we're talking about, but nevertheless, they are Africans. And that is the African mentality. So, how do you, I just, Richard, I admire your planning and your thought process. I just wonder about the logistics of all of this, because these people do not want to change. They do not want to work. They do not want to be part of a Western society. They want the things that the Westerners have produced, but they do not want to be part of that society. They want everything given to them without working for it. So how do you think we can change 60 million odd of them to fit into that kind of plan that you have?
The exact same way that they were changed into believing and thinking that the way that they do now. One of the greatest propaganda machines ever was one that Hitler had raised up in Germany, and he managed to turn a whole nation to accept him and his views and the things that he did through propaganda. And that is what's happening in South Africa. They believe that they can get things free, and they believe that they can take things from the whites. So what do we have to do? The only way to stop that method of thinking is to wield a very big stick. And that's why a police type nation is going to be needed in the first place. It is the only way. If they riot, you tear them down. If they break, you tear them down. If they use violence, you use violence back. But you first need to get to a place of governance. You first need to get into government and be the party that they initially voted for. You have to get them to vote for your party. You have to get the traditional leaders to say to their own people, listen, this is the party that we need to follow because they will bring us change. They will bring us prosperity. They will bring us good fortune. So we have to start there. But it all starts with the change in the Afrikaner. It has to. The Afrikaner is the catalyst. That's where it all ended. That's where it all has to begin. And it might sound strange that you have to first change a minority's way of thinking and attitude before you can change a majority's thinking and attitude. But that is what made us lose the country. And that is what's going to help us get back the country.
I do understand that. But under British rule, under Dutch rule, and under the Afrikaner rule, under the National Party, we were not able to change their way of thinking. And that's hundreds of years. Richard, we need a leader. We need somebody who's going to stand up with a good plan, unite everybody, black, white, Chinese, Russian, Japanese, Martian, whoever. We need somebody to lead all of them. And I don't care what background they come from. We need to stand together for a unified, successful South Africa. But
absolutely.
History does not show us that that can be done.
I say yes. History shows us that it cannot be done, but history does not show us that it wasn't tried. You know, we have. Let's take a look at some countries and their various histories. If you start with England, the English always wanted to rule Britain. They had to what's the proper English word? Subjugate the Irish and the Scottish and the Welsh for them to do that. They had to have wars against the Scots to subdue them. They had to have wars against the Irish to subdue them. They had to starve the Irish actually after the Irish's potato crop failed, and the Irish didn't have any food, so they starved the Irish to subjugate them. So So yeah, that's one nation. And then you have the United States of America that through the Confederate wars that you had, the Confederates against the what's the other group again? My goodness. In any case, they fought against each other, and the one major population that was left out of the whole scenario was the Indian population of the United States of America. Even today, the Indian population that was the indigenous population of the United States, they do not have any great say in the governance of the country, and yet it was their country. Now we have South Africa that has 11 different languages and most probably 11 different cultures. There could be one or two thrown into the mix that aren't even mentioned in the languages. But all different, all have similar parts of their culture, all have different kinds of thinking. And what we are trying to do is we're trying to mix this whole lot together and to make one soup out of it. It cannot be done. There's racism between the various groups. I mean, for example, a Xhosa does not see a Zulu as a man because he's not circumcised. And a Zulu sees a Xhosa as a dog and he doesn't want to sit next to the same fire as a Xhosa. Yet they are together in government. But to mix that lot into one big melting pot and trying to let everybody sit around one fire as a happy family is not going to happen. You have to change their way of thinking. You have to get them to think, yes, you are a Xhosa, so stay in your nation and rule your nation under national laws. Tell us how you want to govern your people. Tell us what cultural laws you want to use, which cultural laws you want to keep, and then govern accordingly. If the rest of the national government does not agree with one or two or three things that you want to do, then it will not be done. It's as simple as that. And if you're going to try and force it to be done, then you'll be taken out. It's as simple. It has to be a leader with a very big stick, and that's the only way that I can see this happening. And the funny thing is, well, not really a funny thing. It's a sad thing, I suppose, that the Sina van Rensburg prophet, very prominent man in South Africa, he had over 800 prophecies, of which most of them had come true. He predicted F.W. de Klerk freeing Nelson Mandela at the cement factory in Vereniging, when Vereniging was only a tent camp and cement didn't even exist, but not even to mention a factory. And he predicted de Klerk freeing Mandela. And he predicted after Mandela there would be a small warrior that rises up for a short while, and that was Mbeki. He came and he went very quickly. And then he predicted another warrior that comes to the fore, but one that brings the country into turmoil. And at that moment, the one who fits the bill is Zuma. And after that, he saw the country in a state of war. And after the war, he saw the colors of the Boer Afrikaner flying again. The Transvaal, the old Transvaal flag was flying once again. So that shows us that there is a state that is established as a Boer Afrikaner state. And it also says to us that there will be some policing done, some big stick wielding, some people are going to get hurt. That's the bottom line. There's no other way. It's not going to be peaceful. It's not going to be a peaceful transition in any way. But the wielding of the big stick, if I can put it that way, can be minimalized.
We're coming to the end of the show. So thank you for being our guest. Thank you, everybody, for being patient. Then, next week. Goodbye.
Welcome to Revolution Radio.
A narco-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week.
Yes.
But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting.
Yes, I see.
By a civil majority in the case of purely internal affairs.
Be quiet.
But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more
Be quiet.
I order you to be quiet.
Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! It's just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible.
You're a loony.
The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
I have worked with the CIA, NSA, Templars, and Bilderbergers. Now I work for you. My show will disclose secrets, science, and esoteric knowledge. Join me, Stephen D. Kelly, for 2 hours every Thursday night at 10 o'clock Eastern Time on freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, Studio A. You can also listen to previous shows by going to youtube.com/Free Revolution Radio.